Good to go?
Yeah.
All right, cool. Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. Got a full house. Hope everyone's comfortable. Thanks for hosting me. Excited to be here. Yeah, let's get into it. I'll be doing Liquid today by Blockstream. And just a quick bit about myself. My name is Gibney, and I'm a teacher who I've now switched my career, so I'm really interested in Bitcoin. So I first started learning about it in the meetup out in Seoul, and if you ever get a chance to visit, check out those guys. They're a really good group, and yeah, I've been working at Blockstream since January this year. I was originally hired to do customer support for our green address wallet. I've got team lead there, but I'm the only member of the support team. And yeah, I'm really interested in technology communications, so I really like helping to bridge the gap between the people inventing the stuff and helping other people understand it. So let's get into it. Today, most of the presentation is going to be about Liquid, but first I'm just going to quickly go over the case for sidechains. What are they important for? Why do we need them? Then I'll talk about the federated model. So that's one type of sidechain, and then I'll go into Liquid, which is our product that we made, our first implementation of federation. So going into sidechains. So as some of you may know, Bitcoin is not the only blockchain that has existed, and it was invented back in 2019, and some of the parameters were not required for the system to work. For example, as Satoshi said, 10-minute block times. There's no reason that it has to be 10 minutes. So other people realize that you can change these parameters and still have a functioning blockchain. So you can play around with things like faster or slower block times, larger, smaller block sizes. If anyone's been paying attention, there's been some dispute about what's better for block sizes. You can change the issuance schedules of coins, and you can have even deeper structural changes like different consensus mechanisms, signature types. If you guys know about Monero, it uses ring signatures to get greater anonymity at the expense of scaling worse. Scripting capabilities, there was some people really wanted Turing complete scripting for Bitcoin, and that didn't happen for security reasons, and now Ethereum is kind of the flagship blockchain for Turing completeness. And then there can be even deeper changes, like if you guys are familiar with Mimblewimble, was just an entire new structure for a blockchain that lets you eliminate history but still validate soundness and other changes. So these are valid changes you can make. You can say that you would prefer to have a blockchain that operates on separate rules, but a lot of problems emerged when people tried to implement these, because if you want to launch a new blockchain, you're going to have a separate token for that. And so we just saw this emergence of thousands of altcoins showing up, which isn't a bad thing in and of itself, but they did come with certain problems. For example, if you want to use Monero's rule set, for example, to do some transacting, let's say you want greater anonymity, then you'll have to switch into a different currency and then deal with stuff like volatility risk. You have to hold a different currency, and then you'll have to worry about whether or not when you trade back to Bitcoin, it'll get the same amount of money. If you want just a test environment for a new blockchain, you either have to use worthless coins, which works for a lot of things, but there are certain test cases where you might want to use coins with actual value. So that would require bootstrapping an entirely new economy. When you launch a new coin, security is not strong. It took Bitcoin a long time to get to where it is today in terms of having proper security for the network. I think even a few weeks ago, there was another Vertcoin had a 51% attack. And there's actually a website called, I think it's crypto51.app, that shows you the cost of 51% attacking various cryptocurrencies, and the cost is much lower than you'd expect. Some of these kind of more well-known currencies only cost a few $100s to actually crack. So that's a big issue. And then because speculation is being a big part of the space, there's sort of skewed incentives as well, where a lot of coins were incentivized not to build useful tech, but more so to just market themselves as much as possible, try and earn more money. So we saw a lot of problems when trying to roll out alternative rule sets. So sidechains are a proposition, are a way to potentially help with this. Essentially, it's a type of blockchain that isn't launched as a standalone economy or ecosystem. It's interoperable with a parent blockchain. Generally, it's discussed in terms of Bitcoin, but you could launch a sidechain off of other cryptocurrencies. So this is a lot of advantages. Enables safer deployment. and testing of new rule sets and features. So you can test them on a sidechain without affecting the base layer at all. It allows you to use a single currency in a variety of different environments. There's a wider network effect for the base chain. And then you don't need to bootstrap a new currency from the beginning. And then, yeah, you can play around with different security trade-offs without affecting other people. For example, I'm sure a lot of you are aware of the disputes about block sizes over the last few years. If we had really effective sidechains, we might not have had this big issue. We could have said, okay, well, you can use your larger block sidechain, we'll keep ours, and you might not have seen so many splits. Thank you very much. Yeah. So I'm just getting over a cold. All right, so how does this work then? The key feature you need to launch a sidechain is a two-way peg. So if you look at the image, any of these smaller circles with the arrows are two-way pegs. So this is some sort of mechanism that lets you move coins from your base chain onto the sidechain and then move them back. So there's several proposed models over the years, but it's actually quite difficult to achieve, especially with Bitcoin's current capabilities. And today we're going to focus on a method called a federation, which uses multi-sig to achieve a two-way peg. So let's look closer at the federated model. Any questions about sidechains before we move on? Just the general kind of appeal of them. All on board? Cool. All right. So federations just use the multi-sig function, which of course already exists on Bitcoin, and uses a set of permissioned functionaries. So this isn't a completely decentralized model. This isn't a trustless model. It's it does change trust assumptions from Bitcoin, but it works with the mechanisms that we have available today. So functionaries have two primary roles. We have the Watchmen and the block signers. So the Watchmen, their job is to enforce the two-way peg, and the block signers are the entities that keep the blockchain going. So they're analogous to the miners in a way. And you need a majority of total functionaries to perform actions. And another way to visualize this is you can kind of think of a federated sidechain as a blockchain that exists within a very, very large multi-sig wallet. So that's it's a helpful way to think about it going forward. So looking at the Watchmen, so their primary job is just to guard the on and off ramps of the sidechain. So if someone wants to peg in coins, what they do is they create a transaction on the Bitcoin blockchain, sending funds to an output that's controlled by majority of the Watchmen. And then once it gets confirmed, if the Watchmen check it out and they see, yep, these funds have been sent by us, they will then issue the coin on the sidechain. And then for the reverse, if you want to peg out some coins, you create a special type of transaction on the sidechain that indicates your desire to peg out the coins, and then the Watchmen see it, and then they will issue your coins back to you on the Bitcoin network from previously pegged in coins. So you can use this mechanism to maintain a one-to-one peg between Bitcoin and the sidechain. And this ensures that you don't have any inflation, and as long as the Watchmen are doing their jobs correctly, you've achieved a two-way peg. Looking at the block signers. Oh yes, good.
So in a federation of exchanges, who would play the role of the Watchmen in this case?
Well, the Watchmen are just any set of entities that people agree on when they're starting a federation. Like if we wanted to, we could start like a federation amongst ourselves in this room and say, okay, there's 11 of us. We need. Yeah, like we would decide on it. Yeah. Oh well, I mean, if you have one person acting as the Watchman, you've effectively got like a bank, like because that person controls the money that goes in and out. So it's whatever you decide on at the launch of the network. If you have one person acting as, there's no real point in having a blockchain because you just have them verify all transactions. But yeah, that's variable. Later on, we're going to get into how it's actually implemented in Liquid, and then you'll see. But yeah, you decide this. Yes?
Is there an incentive to be a Watchman, or just because the structure that you want to put in place assume that you're going to be?
Well, that would depend on the rules. Like you could, well, because remember the Watchman, you could have a federation with Watchmen and then have any sort of consensus mechanism you want, and could gather fees from people and have them all go to the Watchmen if you want. Or you could have a system where maybe the Watchmen had different incentives. So like it really depends on how the rest of the network operates. But yeah, does that answer the question? Yeah.
Sorry, I just didn't quite get the difference between block signer and Watchmen. Watchmen are the signers, aren't they?
Oh, I haven't got to block signers yet.
Okay.
I kind of skipped back. So yeah, Watchmen, like their main role is just enforcing the peg. They just make sure that that any coins issued on the sidechain are backed by Bitcoin essentially frozen on the main chain that have been sent to them, and then they issue coins back to users when they peg out coins. So they're just guarding the on and off ramp. That's their role. All right, so then block signers, they power the sidechain's blocks. So essentially it's a round robin. So they take turns getting to create a block. If I'm one of the block signers, it's my turn. I create my block, I order the transactions, and then I send them to everyone else, all the other block signers. If it is valid, people will sign off with their keys, and as long as you have the required majority of block signers signing off, it gets added to the chain. So you got to make sure that the K of N, the proportion is above 50%, because if it's not, then you might end up with chain splits if different parts of the network disagree. This gives you a lot of advantages over proof of work. So you can see this is a very different trust model. It's you are trusting a majority of these block signers to do the role properly, but it lets you do regular blocks. So you don't have variance like you do in Bitcoin. Bitcoin right now, it's 10-minute blocks on average. Sometimes you get a few blocks in a minute, sometimes you got to wait hours. Here you can have regular blocks at whatever interval you've decided. You don't have a large energy requirement for mining, and there's really minimal reorg risk here. With Bitcoin mining, sometimes blocks can get rewritten 1 or 2 deep, and that's just a normal part of operation of the network. You don't really have that problem here.
I had some talk of merge mining with sidechains.
Merge mining doesn't apply to federations. Yeah, merge mining would apply to a federation. So block signers replace a mining mechanism. Right. So like I said.
Yeah.
How do you enforce the minimum interval between blocks if there is no proof of work?
It's just the different block signers take their turn. So that there's not really it's enforced by the majority of the block signers have to sign off on it. So if someone starts messing around and not doing the job properly, then they won't sign off on them. And so in that scenario, you might have a gap where a block signer was supposed to be online and they're offline, or they didn't do the job properly, and you might have to wait an extra minute for a block. But if you have one entity kind of not doing the job a lot, they probably get booted out of the network.
Does this mean there would need to be another contract, outside of the blockchain, outside of all this, between the block signers and the Watchmen, a commercial contract to support that? Because of the risk one.
Because of the what?
Because of the change in the way that the risk and the trust is handled in these sidechains.
That depends on your, I guess you're asking if there's going to be a legal requirement or that kind of thing. Yeah. Right now we're just talking about a mechanism that people can use. So that'll depend on the scenario you're doing it in. In this scenario, as long as you don't really need a contract, as long as the majority of the entities are performing their role properly. Because if someone tries to mess around, because they need to get a majority of the signatures on board, they can't really. Now, if you can convince that threshold of K entities to change the rules, they can kind of do whatever they want. But that'll all depend on the space within that you're operating in. Yeah.
So signing happens in round robin.
Yep.
That makes sense. And what actually
we've
happens
got
if somebody just doesn't sign, and what do the rest of them do, and what's the sort of...
Okay, so in this scenario, let's say that this guy right here isn't online, doesn't sign it, not a big deal. As long as they've got greater than the threshold, it'll continue operating, right? Now, if let's say you have 11 of 15 is required, as is for Liquid. If 5 of the block signers go down, the network will stop. You can't continue unless you have the threshold.
Oh, sorry, I got confused. The round robin
Does
it choose sets of K at every interval?
Oh, in a properly functioning network, everybody's going to be signing on. You'll get a signature from everyone.
But is one particular, because it says block signers take turns creating blocks, so is there one particular that creates the block?
No, they take turns. So it's just a set order.
Each step of the round robin, is it one that creates the block and then K then have to sign that block?
Well, okay, if I'm a block signer, I'll create a block template, I'll order the transactions, I'll sign it, and then I'll send it to everyone else.
Yeah.
And if it's valid, they'll send it back to me with their signature, and then we broadcast that to the network, it's added to the chain.
And you'll have done that because it was your turn according to the round robin order.
Yep. And then whoever's next turn it is,
So
it's
there's
their
still
turn.
a kind of central point of one person at every step who is in charge of creating the block, right?
Yeah, I
So
mean,
your answer to me before was that, oh, but it doesn't have to, if one is disappeared, it's okay, but that's only for the signing. The creation requires that one to be present, right?
That's right. But I mean, if let's say it's my turn, I'm one of the block signers and I'm not online, and I don't sign, then just there's no block created that time. We just move on.
You just move on.
Yeah. And again, if the system's operating properly, presumably the block signers in a system this size are going to be they're going to know who each other are. So if one person goes offline, then they're going to be getting phone calls. They're an ordinary properly functioning of the network, you're going to have everybody online signing. One person disappears, not a big deal. Continues operating. Okay.
Especially so because you're only using 1 minute, you're using pretty short times. So
yeah, I mean, and with you could choose the block times you want. Like, there's no reason you couldn't have a federation that would do 5-minute blocks regularly. Maybe if there's a scenario where you're building, if you're using a federation as really massive blocks and you want a larger interval, maybe you have some scenario where you have very, very tiny amounts of data with the federation, you could have much faster block times, but yeah. All right, we saw this already. So yeah, putting the roles together, functionaries can be the same entities, or they could, in theory, be different. You might want a greater or lower threshold of, or greater or lower number of block signers to Watchmen, or vice versa. But you can think of them as the same entities performing different roles. So yeah, they essentially force a separate blockchain operating on the side. Users can send Bitcoin in. They'll get issued as one-to-one backed Bitcoin on the sidechain. They can be moved around and then pegged out at will. And as long as the functionary is online doing their job, you have your sidechain, and then now you can play around with all sorts of rules on that sidechain. All right. Yes.
There is a waiting period before you get your correspondent liquid.
That's right, and again, that's going to be set by the right. So right now, I'm just explaining federations in general, and then we're going to get into the specifics of liquid in a moment. Yeah. All right. Actually, now, yeah. Okay. So liquid is our first implementation of this, our first release sidechain, and the main role it's going to perform is as an inter-exchange settlement network. So one of the notable things about the Federation is that it's a very different trust model than Bitcoin. So it's not a completely trustless system like Bitcoin is, but if you're sending money to and from exchanges, you're already trusting those exchanges to hold your funds. So you don't really need to make any extra trust assumptions within that context, sending coins around. So yeah, these are the things we're setting out to achieve here: faster trading and settlement times between exchanges. We're also testing out some new features like confidential transactions and confidential assets. Everything's controlled by the Liquid Federation. That's our group of functionaries. And you can issue and control multiple assets. And once users get access to controlling liquid funds themselves, you can also get reduced custodial risk for funds on exchange. And so what we do is we provide the software for this and the hardware. The software is built using our Elements platform. And we also have custom-made hardware for the functionaries to run to keep their keys safe. Because as you can imagine, the stakes are a lot higher for the private keys that the functionaries hold. So we provide hardware for that.
So this is currently a federation of exchanges existing?
It's mostly exchanges. There are also some OTC makers. Later on, I'll actually give you a list of a lot of the members, and we can go into them. All right, so let's look at the liquid functionaries. In version 1, we have 15 of them. And each of them is both a Watchman and a block signer. And we use greater than 2/3 of functionaries for the role, so 11 of 15. So that means is at least 5 of them would have to go down or be compromised to halt the network. And even then, if they were all compromised, they couldn't steal anyone's funds. And you would need to compromise 11 of these 15 in order to break the rules or steal funds. So to address this, they're really widely dispersed. We have no more than 3 functionaries in a single country, and they're also geographically dispersed in case there's some sort of natural disaster. It shouldn't affect more than 3 of them at once. I apologize to any New Zealanders. We forgot New Zealand on this map. I got some grief about that earlier this week, so this will be addressed soon. Yeah, that's not real locations
Is
for.
that Greenland or Iceland?
It's Greenland. Yeah, this is not an actual. That's not where the functionaries are. That would be that would be bad OPSEC anyways. But if anyone knows an exchange running in Greenland, give them our number and we'll add them to the network. Yeah.
Is it only the functionaries that run nodes?
No, there's a liquid client available. We'll get to that later. So you can view the blockchain yourself. But for the functionaries perform the Watchmen and the block signer roles, and they require their special private key, and that's their role. So they enforce the pegs, and they take care of block creation. So those are the 2 key things. All right. So yeah, main features of Liquid: we have 1-minute block times. And as I said earlier, we have really minimized reorg risk. There is some technically possible 1 block reorg. So you really only need to wait for 2 confirmations when receiving Liquid Bitcoin. So that means that every transaction you make, as long as it gets in the next block, will be less than 2 minutes, which is a huge improvement over the Bitcoin network. And as I said earlier, it's going to require greater than 2/3 of the functionaries online, and you can keep having blocks, keep going. Issued assets is something we're really excited about. So not only do you have liquid Bitcoin that can be pegged in, you can also have native assets existing on the chain. So our functionaries and users, anyone who can run the client, can issue their own token. It can be tokenized fiat or tokenized altcoins. So if someone wants to peg in 1-to-1 backed Ethereum that they kind of promise that they are holding in their account, they can do that, or any sort of altcoins. You can issue digital collectibles or attested assets. So you could see a scenario where banks who are holding gold bars want to issue tokenized versions of these on Liquid, any utility tokens or securities, and you can have them all operating on the same network. They can be issued and can also be destroyed by the reissuer. So let's say you can issue your tokenized Great Britain pound. It goes in circulation. Someone wants to withdraw the pounds you're holding for you. You can destroy the asset on the chain and continue functioning. So cool thing about this is you can also mix inputs and outputs of different assets on a single transaction as well. And the issuer can decide if they want to publicly issue the new asset or to keep that information private. So you could see transactions just like this here, where let's say someone's issued their version of liquid silver, and they're saying, I've got 50,000 grams of silver, and they want to send it to someone. They would also can also send liquid Bitcoin in the same transaction. So actually, every transaction in Liquid requires to have at least 1 input of liquid Bitcoin, because all the fees are paid in liquid Bitcoin. So this is a type of transaction that we might see in the future. Yes, go back.
How is the exchange rate, not just for any case, determined? How do
The exchange rate?
Yeah.
Could you be more specific?
If you're like Bitcoin and you want to translate to liquid coin, or
Oh, it's going to be 1-to-1 backed. Yeah. So because as long as the Watchmen are online doing their job, you send 1 Bitcoin to them, they'll issue 1 Bitcoin on Liquid sidechain and back. So it will be worth the same.
It isn't guaranteed to be literally exactly the same value on the open marketplace, but it's guaranteed to be very close because there's an arbitrage.
You could have arbitrage.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing. If one was worth more or less, you could just use the peg-in functions to make money.
I would expect it to be worth slightly less than Bitcoin because there's always a tiny risk, but it's going to be a very small difference, I would guess.
Yeah, and there might be a fee to get it back to real Bitcoins.
Yeah.
That might be like a spread instead of an actual level.
That's true. Good point. Yeah.
Right, and then so one thing you may have noticed is that if you can actually have different assets in the same transaction, this effectively gives you single transaction atomic swaps. So atomic swaps are a type of method where you can trade two currencies with each other in a way that guarantees neither party can cheat and doesn't require third-party escrow. And you can do this. So all you have to do is set up a transaction. So let's say Alice is going to buy 180,000 grams of liquid silver from Bob. They can set up this transaction where Alice is putting the liquid Bitcoin, Bob is putting in the liquid silver, and this transaction will either get confirmed or not in the Liquid network. So once they get both signatures, it goes out and done. So this is a big improvement as well, because right now you can already do atomic swaps using hash time lock contracts, but there are some struggles with this. If you're operating with transactions on two different chains, some of them might get confirmed faster or slower, so that can be problematic. This lets you do a very similar thing, just in a single transaction. So yeah, we've also rolled out confidential transactions. So this is a way that you can hide the amounts in a transaction, but still allow anyone else to verify that the amounts are valid. So this is a big boost to privacy. This is something a lot of people are hoping to add to Bitcoin soon, or at least some point in the future. One of the problems with it is that confidential transactions require a lot more space than regular transactions. Now, fortunately, we're not as space constrained on a federation because we don't have the same trust assumptions. It's okay if you have larger transactions. We have faster blocks, so we have 4 megabyte blocks, same as Bitcoin blockchain, but 1 every minute. So yeah, you can afford to use a bit more space. And then confidential assets allows, basically extends confidential transaction functionality to your assets. You can hide what type of assets you're actually moving in different inputs. So let's see what this looks like. So in a regular Bitcoin transaction, you'll have something like this. We have an input with 10 Bitcoin, outputs with 7 Bitcoin and 2.99. Why is it 2.99? Fees. There you go. Yeah.
By the way, that's a big fee.
It's well, yeah, I know. I was going to edit that, but I had too many zeros and nines in the end there. But it's an expensive transaction. It's a baller. Yeah. All right. So yeah, anyone looking at this can see. Okay, well, 10 is greater than or equal to 7 plus 2.99. So this is a valid transaction. No Bitcoin has artificially been created. With confidential transactions, you can create transactions like this, where you have an X amount of LBTC. And 2 outputs with Y and Z, and then your fees. And using certain types of binding signatures, you can verify that X is the same as Y plus Z plus the fees. So it allows people to hide their amounts, but still allows everyone else to ensure that there's no artificially created coins. Now, right, if we take a look at confidential assets, this allows you to hide the type of asset that you're doing. So with this transaction we did earlier, when you're sending someone liquid silver, this is what the participant view would be, because they know what the different parts of the transaction are. And what everyone else in the network would see is just something like this. There's 2 inputs of some hidden asset, 2 outputs of some hidden asset, and they can verify that W plus X is the same as Y plus Z plus the fees, but they don't know what the different amounts are. So this is a big boost to privacy and fungibility. And also the participants can reveal these amounts to anyone else if they want to. Like if, let's say, I'm some sort of exchange or bank that has legal requirements and I need to do some proof of reserves, I could reveal to an auditor the binding key, and then they would be able to view, okay, yep, everything is as you said, yep.
Does this apply to the assets as well? So you can check that the silver hasn't been created either?
That's right. So, yeah. Well, yeah, that's the thing as well. Like, keep in mind though that all of these other assets, like, it's not trustless. You have to. Someone issued that and is promising you that it's worth that amount. So, the federation is responsible for ensuring that the asset securities are hold what they do. If Tether issues liquid Tether, it's not the federation's responsibility to ensure that they have the reserves that they do. That's their responsibility. So, but yeah, what we do is kind of allow them to transact in a more private way. And this is a transaction from this morning. Like, you can go to our block explorer, blockstream.info/liquid, and you can view activity on there. And yeah, this just had 3 inputs of some kind, 2 outputs of some kind, and transaction fees, as you pointed out, a lot lower than what I had listed, so a bit more fair. But
I'm curious, the length of those addresses looks quite similar to Bitcoin addresses. But I remember the original version of Elements, you had much longer addresses because you had a kind of scanning key built into the address. I presume that's not Remember what that was? It was like it was an extra field that allowed the receiver to scan a private kind of memo within the transaction. I guess that's been removed.
It's before my time.
Yeah, it's
That's
probably-
yeah. I'm sorry, no,
Because they
not
look
sure.
like pretty similar. Am I about right?
Well, I can find out for you if you like. Yeah,
It's a
yeah.
detail.
Yeah, I mean, if we have any standing questions at the end, just shoot me a message. I can post them there, but I'm not sure about that. Yeah. All right, and then just as another example, if we put this all together, like this is our atomic swap that we gave an example of earlier. If we're going to look at this, so this is what the participants would see if they use confidential transactions and confidential assets, and this is what the rest of the network would see. They would just see 2 inputs of some kind, 4 outputs of some kind, and a very, very expensive fee, as you pointed out. And yeah, so most transactions that if you just look up on our blockchain explorer now will be like this, because yeah, we have confidential transactions on by default. You can turn them off if you want to save space. Remember, it's a much smaller transaction if you don't use CT or CA, but yeah, they're on by default for now.
So the fee goes to the block signer?
No, the block signers do not collect the fees. When you're pegging out transactions, you have to use a very, very large transaction of Bitcoin involving, 11 of 15 multi-sig that you need to peg out. So that's going to cost quite a bit on Bitcoin fees. So right now, fees from Liquid go into a pool, which are then used to pay the fees for when people peg out. Right, so yeah, like why would people want to use this then? So the cool tricks that we've just looked at, but from a business perspective, like if you're an exchange, yeah, you can enable much, much faster user deposits. So if I'm a user, if I'm a trader, and I don't want to hold my Bitcoins on an exchange, because if you don't control the private keys, they're not really yours, right? But there's a trade-off there, right? Because let's say market starts moving and you want to do some trading because you see an opportunity, and you have your keys, or you have your coins stored yourself, you have to wait for that, 6, 5, or 7 confirmations, however many the exchange is telling you. So if you're holding it in liquid Bitcoin, though, you can send it to exchange from within 2 minutes, as long as it's running. So this is a big advantage to traders. It's an advantage to exchanges because then they can get higher trade volumes, a wider customer base, and increased liquidity. It also greatly simplifies managing multiple assets. So there are wallets out there that will let you hold a variety of different cryptocurrencies, but then you have to deal with all the different nodes that are running. You have to deal with different fluctuating block times in the different networks, different security threats. If one of the coins gets attacked. Whereas if you have multiple assets all on a single chain, you just need to be able to trust that that chain is functioning properly. So this greatly simplifies managing multiple assets, both for a regular user and for a business. And yeah, so one of the big use cases going forward is that for OTC market makers and exchanges or banking institutions, it can really reduce volatility risk. So let's say your company that sells Bitcoin to users. You're not really in the game of holding Bitcoin and hoping the price will go up. You just want to make money off of the trading. So the less time that you have to spend between sourcing your liquidity and selling it to your user, the more reduced risk there is for you. Also allows, as we said earlier, with the atomic swap type thing, custodial free trades between members, and you can do this with tokenized fiat as well. So if someone's issued tokenized fiat that you're willing to acknowledge is actual fiat, then yeah, you can get the same benefits there. And yeah, it removes a central point of failure for custodians. So presumably more traders will be willing to hold their own Bitcoin rather than store them in exchange. So this is good both for the user, because then they don't have to worry about their funds disappearing if the exchange gets hacked, and it's better for the exchange if more of their users store their own Bitcoin, because then they become less of a honeypot, less of a target for hackers. So let's look at this, how this would actually work. If you want to use the two-way peg, you want to convert some Bitcoin to LBTC. So yeah, as we said, you just need to send to a specific address on the main chain, and we require waiting for 102 confirmations before the liquid Bitcoin gets issued. This is because we can expect this to be used for very large amounts, so you're going to want pretty high threshold. Some of you may know 100 confirmations is the required waiting time for Coinbase transactions. So we decided to go with that plus a couple of extra confirmations just in case maybe not all the members of the Federation have are completely up to date with blocks. Or
You have to clarify what you mean by coin-based transactions nowadays.
oh well, yeah, sure. Coinbase transaction, not the company. Coinbase transactions, like if right now in Bitcoin, if you're a miner and you create a new block, you can collect the block reward, which is the block subsidy and the fees in a special Coinbase transaction that gives you a new Bitcoin, but those have a 100 block relative time lock on them. So miners can't spend their newly awarded coins for another 100 blocks. It reduces the incentive for small scale reorgs and stuff. Because yeah, if you're a big miner and you could spend the coins right away, then you could spend the coins then quickly reorg the chain. So that there's other reasons for that as well. And then yeah, if you want to peg out, it's a bit of an easier process because you only need to wait for, or it's a faster process because you only need to wait for 2 confirmations on the Liquid network, and then they'll get issued. Now,
So
yes.
when you peg in the liquids, is the kind of equal BTC minted at that time like a Coinbase transaction, or is that issued by? Is it already in existence and it's issued by?
Oh no, it's issued as they're pegged in, right? So you don't have like, there is not a situation where you have like all this Bitcoin or liquid Bitcoin waiting on the Liquid chain and this one pegs in. It gets, there's a special type of peg-in transaction that essentially creates it on a sidechain, and the peg-out transaction, like if you were to only see the Liquid chain, it would look like creation and destruction. Yeah, but the thing is, they'll always correspond with, with the corresponding transactions on the main Bitcoin chain. Right. Now, you guys might notice that 102 confirmations is a bit inconvenient. You might want something faster than that. So we can expect a lot of other ways to convert between the two. You can just trade directly with other users. You could use a custodial service like an exchange. A lot of our exchange partners, I know the Rock Trading has opened up Liquid deposits and withdrawals. So you could deposit Bitcoin there and then withdraw in Liquid. We can expect cross-chain atomic swaps to happen. They're already possible, though somewhat problematic, but they're doable. If there's a scenario in the future where I think we mentioned earlier where you might have Liquid Bitcoin and Bitcoin trading at slightly different values, that's a big incentive for arbitrageurs. I'm not sure how to pronounce that word. Arbiters to offer conversion between the two, because then they can make slightly more off the interest and or slightly more off the price difference. And yeah, we can Lightning Network is possible on top of Liquid. All the tools are there. All the scripting is there. So if that happens, Lightning channels effectively have atomic swaps built into them as part of the protocol. You can so we may be able to see people converting between the two using the respective Lightning networks. And there can also be advantages to users of different exchanges where they don't even have to deal with the Liquid Bitcoin themselves. So let's say I have an account with 2 different exchanges that are both using Liquid, Exchange A and Exchange B, and I have Bitcoin in one I want to send to the other one. I could just inform the Exchange A that I'd like to send so much to the other one, and if they send in Liquid Bitcoin, it can get deducted and issued in Bitcoin from the user's account. They don't even need to deal with Liquid themselves, but all that can be handled by the exchanges. So we can expect services like this to open up as more and more of the functionaries implement. Oh gosh, thank you. All right, so these are some of the members that have already come online. As you can see, it's pretty, I guess, diverse or widely spread out group. As we mentioned earlier, with no more than 3 in any country. You may notice this is more than 15. Some of them are Liquid members, so they're not actually block signers or Watchmen, but they do have functionality. They can do peg-ins and peg-outs and issue assets and stuff like this. But these are not all exchanges. For example, like BitMEX is a derivatives market, and Swiss exchange. That's simply a stock exchange in Switzerland that is interested in entering the starting to enter the Bitcoin ecosystem. And I believe the Rock Trading has been head of the pack. They were the first to issue deposits of withdrawals. Yes.
Is NYSE in the process of becoming a member, or you have any?
The New York Stock Exchange. I am not sure off the top of my head.
Is it possible to accept new members into Federation? Or is it hard coded at the time of the creation?
It's possible, but it requires a pausing of the network. Like it's hard coded essentially.
So basically, this is all the members we've got for the rest of our lives.
No, not quite. Because this is version 1 of Liquid, so you can issue updates later on. We're going to touch a bit on that in a couple slides. So the current version has 15, and it requires you would have to kind of change some rules in the network to add or remove members, but that'll be changed in upcoming version. Almost done here. If you want to get started and start playing around with this stuff yourself, if you're into the kind of low-level stuff, everything, all the software for Liquid has been built using our Elements platform, which are all open source blockchain tools. So you can check them out there. And then last month we released our Liquid D client. This is somewhat analogous to a Bitcoin full node in that it allows you to kind of view the activity on the blockchain. It doesn't give you validation power like it does in Bitcoin, but similar. But it includes, for example, a wallet. You can use the peg-in feature. Liquid D does not allow you to peg out though, so don't. Not at this point. So if you peg in, you need to make sure that you have access. You can get back to Bitcoin if you have an account at one of the other exchanges. And so just be careful for now. If you want to play around with this, peg in small amounts, know that it might be a bit more difficult to get back out. You can issue your own assets. You can download this and issue Atom Coin tonight if you want. And you can search and display Liquid's blockchain data similar to a full node does. And some exchanges have already been accepting deposits and withdrawals. So, and then stuff that's coming up. So in the pipeline, soon we're expecting more and more exchanges to integrate and offer interoperable services. We're going to be adding Liquid functionality for the Green Address wallet, and also be releasing a Liquid wallet, so you don't actually need to run Liquid D for less technical users. And further ahead, we're going to be adding to Elements and then Liquid. We're going to be looking at Snore signatures, signature aggregation, bulletproofs. It's a big improvement for our confidential transactions. In the future, we'll be able to add larger federations. There were technical limits that limited us to 15 for version 1, but we'll be able to get past those in version 2. And then, as per your question earlier, we're going to have dynamic federations. So that's going to allow the functionaries to add or remove members without disruption to the network. And the main thing about that we're excited for is that this is essentially an application platform. Using issued assets that's going to open up a lot of opportunities for more complex financial instruments, a bigger set of things like tokenized fiat. So it's going to be really interesting seeing how these different participants and users use the issued assets, and then how they can interact with each other. And as I said earlier, we can have a Lightning Network on top of Liquid. So we can expect that to come. And that's everything for today. Thank you very much for coming. And if you have any questions, we can get into it.
Can you compare Liquid to rootstock? They also do federation and sidechain, except they have POW and smart contracts.
I can't. I'm sure someone can. I'm not really familiar with rootstock, actually. I think one of their main. I think they went for more advanced scripting was one of their main things they were going for.
They have the EVM, basically, they have the Ethereum virtual machine.
Yeah.
Or a variant of it. But also I think they use merge mining, and it's not, is it a federation? I don't actually know.
It is a federation.
It is a federation, okay.
Sorry, I can't get into that, yeah.
Can I ask one?
Go for it.
Fees, you said...
right, yeah.
You said something like the fees that are paid on Liquid go into kind of an account
There's
that used to pay the Bitcoin fees for the peg outs.
Yes, yeah.
But is it like a market for fees within Liquid, or
Yeah, it's like Bitcoin in that
so there's no
limited space.
guarantee that the amount of fees you collect will necessarily pay for the peg outs?
Yeah, that might have to be supplemented by Functionaries or us. Yeah, but we'll.
I guess a slightly related question with the peg outs. I'm trying to imagine in my head how it works. Is it like each individual person who wants to withdraw some, they get a peg out created for them, or is it batched, or is it like specifically the Watchmen or whatever, the block signers that are making these?
So you have like might want to do this on the whiteboard maybe. So like, well, yeah, like essentially if I'm pegging out coins, I create the special peg out transaction, which gets confirmed on the on the Liquid blockchain, and then once the Watchmen see that it's been confirmed, what they then do is they spend from an older UTXO that pegged in funds, and they send it to your address on the Bitcoin chain as it was described in the peg out transaction in Liquid.
Who creates the peg out?
Oh,
not everyone can do that, right? It's like the block.
Oh, like any of the members can. So that means that the Functionaries and the kind of the wider set of kind of members that we've said there.
All the members as well.
Yeah.
Oh, that's slightly different.
Yeah. So, yeah, of course, that only gets it has to be confirmed. Or it has to be signed off on by the Watchmen. But yeah, there's a wider range of people could issue the pegouts. Yeah.
What's the requirement to be a functionary, or it's just a cost?
Yeah, well, I mean, you had to be talking to us over the last year or two, and we had to, like it's for the launch of the network is essentially like working with us, and we do charge a consultancy fee for like maintaining the network.
So it's mainly the cost.
Yeah, and like yeah, I mean, going forward, like if the Functionaries wanted to, and if they were confident that they understood how the software worked and decided they didn't need our help anymore, they could essentially run their own federation and start adding their own rules and add new members, kick other ones out. So it's not directly controlled by us, but someone had to get it going. So and like because we built it and are planning on adding new features, kind of fingers crossed they're going to keep paying us and we can continue that relationship going. But yeah, I mean like. Yeah, once the network is launched, it's run by the Functionaries.
So, sorry.
Rock paper scissors.
Are you aware of any more plans to have other people apart from the rock trading allow people to peg out?
Oh yeah. Like I believe that the well, okay, it depends what you mean by peg out, because if you're withdrawing, like.
And you get back Bitcoin.
Oh yeah, I think I. Stop the camera. No, I mean I think there's one or two others that are actually have enabled it. I'm hesitant to say their names because like I don't want to get it wrong, but no, I think like the idea is that most or all of the Functionaries will offer, liquid deposit withdrawals. It's to their advantage too, If you're running an exchange and you have a Functionary but you're not giving, and like you have a competitor who's also running a Functionary and gives their users, more options, like you're gonna lose business. So I think it's reasonable to expect that, most of the Functionaries that have, end users will probably try to offer as much.
Do you know why they may not?
What's that?
Do you know why they might not? If there's any concerns that
well, I mean, like, you have to put the effort into, like, like a lot of exchanges are really, really like busy because they have, 106 other issues to be dealing with. So I think the main thing is like getting familiar with the software and for them, getting comfortable implementing it into their system. But I think there's a strong incentive for them to do so. So I think you can't expect that. Yeah.
Anybody's got their money stuck in Liquid, just ask us. We'll help you to make the coin swap. We'll write the code for you.
Oh yeah, and you can go on to like you can go on to the Bitcoin Core Slack channel. Go to UASF, and Grubels is like doing exchanges between people between Liquid and regular Bitcoin. So yeah, again, just do like peer-to-peer transactions and stuff. So, but yeah, I think I would be very, very surprised if like 6 months from now, rock trading was the only one who really was doing it. We'll probably see that developing pretty quickly.
So, in practice, are you seeing kind of individuals pegging in and out Bitcoin, or is it primarily the functionaries that create a block transaction to get that LBTC and then trade it on the exchanges rather than.
Well, so far it's mainly been the Functionaries, but that's because they've had access to it. Like the network launched in late September, and so the Functionaries have been kind of dipping their toes in the water over the last couple of months and starting to do things there. And the Liquid D client was only released last month, so a few people have pegged in transactions. But yeah, I would expect to, yeah, you probably would see larger players doing very large movements of peg-ins and pegs out. And if you're like a smaller player, yeah, I mean, it probably would make more sense just to do some sort of small swap or trade. Yeah.
What would be the incentive to use this over sort of having lightning channels open between the exchanges?
Well, lightning channels between exchanges would, so if you open a channel, you can get, you can run into liquidity issues. Also, channels are hot wallets. If you're an exchange using dealing with large sums of Bitcoin, you do not want those in a hot wallet. So actually, we have an extra slide on there we go. Yeah, thanks. There we go. Liquid versus Lightning. So here you go. Yeah, it's like the main difference. Yeah, probably is security versus speed trade-off. I mean, Lightning transactions are instant, but they're ideal for smaller transactions. You're less likely to run into routing and liquidity issues. With Liquid, it's a broader network, broadcast style, so you can send transactions to any person operating on the network. So it's a bit slower, less than 2 minutes, but yeah, you can actually have, cold storage on Liquid, which you can't with Lightning. Yeah.
So for those list of companies that you had up, are they all on the same confederation? They're the same.
There's only one Liquid right now. Yeah,
right.
Yeah. I guess
could in future be multiple.
Oh sure, yeah.
Have different purposes, different.
Yeah, absolutely. You may there may be reasons for for multiple federations in different jurisdictions or different for different use cases and stuff. But I would expect you probably, for people doing inter-exchange Bitcoin settlement, there probably is incentive for that to grow into a single large federation because because then you can send to as many participants as you can without changing. But it's entirely possible that maybe a country out there would want to do would want to connect its banks through a federation, for auditability purposes or something like that. But
yeah, I was asking, you don't have to be an exchange, right? You can be
Oh no, some of these are not exchanges. That's just we usually use exchanges as examples because first of all, that's generally where end users will be interacting and doing stuff. But Six is just a Swiss stock exchange, and I'm sure a couple of these other ones are not. They're not all exchanges. Crypto Garage is not. They're not an exchange. Same with BitMEX is kind of an exchange, I guess. But yeah.
As a follow up, so let's say I want to be not me, but that entity wants to be a member, right? There is how does this there's a package they have to pay for it, and you guys do
there's a monthly fee, so let's say you represented some company starting up here, we would put you in touch with with our product team and then get some talk with use cases and go forward.
How are you going to migrate to the next version of Liquid? Assuming those companies are going to have lots of funds stuck at the first federation, what's the strategy to migrate them to the newest version?
Oh, that's a bit over my head. So yeah, I don't know if there's a way where you can where you would pause the network and then launch version 2 with all the funds still there, or if they'd have to withdraw them. I'm not 100% sure, but I can find out for you. We can post there afterwards.
Well, I'm curious. You're expecting upgrades to Liquid Network. How are you going to upgrade those companies? I'm guessing they're also curious about that.
The answer is definitely there. I just don't know off the top of my head right now.
Moving the money from one multi-sig into another multi-sig, I guess. Right? Not on the Bitcoin side.
Yeah, I can find out and post it for you on the event page. That
would be.
Okay. All right.
There's similar problems with early Lightning network, right? So you're having to close a lot of payment channels in early implementations of Lightning and reopen them because there's breaking changes on new versions. So I suppose when it's this early, it's inevitable you're going to have.
So you're saying hard fork Liquid, right?
Yeah, it's comparable to a hard fork. if you can coordinate everybody to make an update at the same time, like, I believe you would be able to keep the network running. I mean, it shouldn't. I don't think it would require withdrawing all the coins, issuing them again. And again, like all the outputs are public, so I mean, you yourself could fork the Liquid network if you can convince people to go with you. So.
Can you go back to that slide with Liquid versus Lightning? Because the thing I struggle with is, like, there's a number of things to compare a solution to. So you can compare Liquid to Lightning. You could also compare it just to simple payment channels between entities, or setting up a new altcoin. It's just like it's hard to work out where the advantages lie for a particular solution.
Yeah.
So maybe just, can you talk a bit?
Sure, I can go into more detail. Yeah, I mean, a helpful way to think about it is, like, this is primarily this is a network for people. Like, traders are going to be probably one of the most significant groups of end users using this. People who need to get their coins on and off and sent between exchanges quickly. It's going to be very useful for them because with Lightning channels, you're limited by liquidity, right? If you want to, you don't want to send 1 Bitcoin to someone over Lightning. Like right now, you really couldn't because there wouldn't be channels available for that, and you'd have to keep 1 Bitcoin in a hot wallet, which you don't want to do. So that's one of the main things. With Liquid, you have multiple assets. For example, that's there isn't really asset issuance on Lightning. Because it's broadcast style, send to anyone on the network. Don't need to worry about routing. And actually, you can have Lightning on top of Liquid. Which might happen. I mean, it probably will happen in the future. Like any blockchain that has hash locks, time locks, and multisig can have Lightning channels. So I always find this is a tough comparison because it's a little kind of apples oranges in some ways. Like there's definitely crossover, but Lightning tends to be for instant payments, smaller payments, and has. Is less secure because of the hot wallet issue. Those are the most significant differences. Yeah, and then for things like long-term storage, like you're not going to want to use either of these. Like you're going to want to use, an on-chain transaction in cold storage. Definitely do not keep long-term storage on either of these methods. Yeah.
I think it's really about capacity, right? Because if you think about like arbitrage, arbitrage is a sort of principal use case. It's kind of key that you can move stuff in an arbitrary direction very fast, whereas with Lightning, the whole thing is you've got to set up, it's like a cache, you've got to set up all the directions with the right capacity in the right directions before you see what I mean? It doesn't really fit into that.
So I suppose the interesting comparison would be just setting up payment channels bilaterally with all the organisations.
But that's what I'm saying, because you have to have the capacity in advance of any sudden decision you've got. I want to move up 10 million now from this place to this place. But with Lightning, you've got to set up the capacity in advance. It doesn't really fit.
Forget Lightning.
Oh, sorry, payment channel. Payment channel is just a subsection of the same functionality. It's just without the HTLCs. And I'm saying that's even worse because you've got to fix that specific capacity from A to B in advance if you wanted to make that payment. It just doesn't really fit. Yeah, because the whole thing about arbitrage is it's in that area, isn't it? You know what I mean?
For anything where volume is important, like Lightning is not ideal. Like.
If a trader had working capital of 10 million and they want to trade on 10 exchanges, they have to split it up with 1 million on each exchange. So their capital could work less efficiently for them. They have to split it up.
I think Lightning start to choke with $20, above $20.
What's that?
Lightning start to choke about the transaction above like $20 or so.
Yeah, I mean, like, and stuff like that will, probably improve going forward. But, considering the exchanges sometimes need to source liquidity on the orders of millions of dollars, you're not going to want to use payment channels for that. That's, that's a whole different thing.
So is there liquids on testnet that you can have
I'm not sure actually. We've definitely had test versions of the Federation out there. I don't know if there is a testnet liquid running. I don't think so. Yeah.
Can I ask one more question from the talk? I may have misheard you, but I think you said that Liquid D, because it's just been released recently, that it can't validate. And I was wondering what you meant by that.
Oh, this was right. I'm being careful with my words because we took a bit of heat for a tweet of ours a few weeks back. So like, you know, on the Bitcoin network, like you run a node, and the idea is that you don't really need to trust the miners or, you know, someone else, because if the miner creates an invalid block, you can reject it, and, you know, you and the other nodes validating the network can, you know, spin off and do your own thing. You know, we saw that, you know, like with UASF in 2017, that was the what they were threatening to do if they didn't roll out SegWit. You can't really do it in Liquid. Like, you know, you can notice that a block is like has some invalid stuff in it, but if the functionaries validate and keep going, like, you can't really do much about it. So
you can watch what's happening, right?
You can watch it.
Something happens that is outside the expected rule set. I don't know.
Yeah.
You could see it happening.
You could see it, but you can't really do anything about it. Whereas with your full node on Bitcoin, large groups of full nodes that handle activity, they can do something about it. In Liquid, you can't. Yeah.
There was a tweet about that.
Yeah. There was a tweet that slipped through the review process and said trustlessly use. You do not trustlessly use Liquid. Yeah. So yeah, we did issue a retraction of that, or you know, it was there was a blog post we wrote that was a little bit too concisely summarized. So yeah.
So the code for this specific federation of Liquid, is the code completely open source, or is
Yeah, use elements. Yeah.
So I can issue my own sidechain.
Yeah, we can do it tonight. No, I'm just kidding. I think it might take a bit longer, but yeah, no, like you can use elements and launch your own sidechain if you want. Yeah. Please do. Let us know how it goes. Yeah.
All the code for like pegging out for all the functions that the functionaries do, is all of that is open source? I seem to remember somebody saying it wasn't at one point.
Well, I mean, the some of the block signing like involves custom hardware because
that part, yeah.
right, yeah. So that stuff is going to yeah, like.
Could we get a few minutes on, or a few sentences on what the special source magic of the hardware is? What exactly?
This is like hardware is what I know least about, unfortunately.
Right,
So if you have specific questions about it, like I'll leave you guys my contact info, and I can get you guys answers. But I don't know too much about the hardware myself. Just
the gist of it is just like the keys are very well protected because if somebody tries to tamper it, it gets destroyed. Is that basically?
Yeah. Well, no. Yeah, it's not like, well, I know there's this whole meme about like having thermite in them. They're going to explode if someone tries to. Like I think it's like I believe that the attempt is to get as close as you can to cold storage security, where the keys aren't constantly exposed to being online, but they need to be able to sign, you know, blocks and pick out transactions very, very regularly. So that's what they're aiming for. But I'm not a hardware guy, so yeah, I'm not sure.
So one topic we were discussing before
Sure.
the presentation was the journey that sidechains have been on since the various white papers. And
right. Yeah.
And how perhaps some people, no names, are disappointed that sidechains with altcoin functionality haven't really developed as fast as perhaps Liquid has. Any thoughts or observations on how sidechains have evolved over the last few years?
Yeah, I mean, well, essentially, like the original paper talks about SPV proofs, but like trustless pegs turned out to be much more difficult than anticipated, essentially. And things like merge mining have their own security issues. Like I'm not an expert in rootstock or drive chains, like so I can't really comment on them specifically. But for something like a federated network for inter-exchange settlement, it doesn't, you know, even though it's a different trust model than Bitcoin is, for a user sending funds to and from exchanges, it doesn't require any extra trust assumptions. So it makes sense for this particular use case. Like there are technical concerns with some of the other methods, but not sure I'm ready to go into those. Like, and also like, there's kind of the question kind of implies that like we don't get altcoin functionality. I'm not really sure exactly what that means, because like you can have altcoin functionality on federations. Like you could run a federated network that enforces, you know, a Monero style rule set if you wanted to. There's no reason you couldn't do that. Like it wouldn't have, you wouldn't need mining for it. But yeah, like that was one of the reasons I separated the the strong or the federations part and the sidechains part of the presentation, because there's the federations and the liquid part of the presentation, because liquid stuff is specific to liquid. But yeah, you could use a federated peg and any rule set you want. Yeah, like I'd have to ask, not naming any names, what is specifically meant by altcoin functionality there. But yeah. I don't know. I hope that answers the question somewhat.
Are there any changes to script at all? I mean, I know you mentioned that Bulletproof is coming. That's not script, but Bulletproof is coming and Schnorr is coming. Are there any other changes to script?
I
mean, even if you don't know what they are,
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if there are. Yeah, the changes that I know of aren't script level, because confidential transactions isn't scripting. That's with the amount fields and the witness data. And then, I guess Schnorr signatures are script level change, and that's coming. And then, Bulletproofs wouldn't count as that, I don't believe. Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah.